It was one of those oppressive summer afternoons where the heat clung to your skin like a second layer, making the air inside the house feel stagnant, as if it hadn't stirred in hours. Sunlight streamed through the windows in hazy streaks, and every fan in the house whirred at full speed, doing little to cut through the thick, humid atmosphere. I'd just returned home from college for summer break, and for the weekend, it was just me and my dad, Martin. My mom, Karen, had left town to visit her sister, leaving the two of us alone in our quiet suburban home. At first, it felt kind of nice. Dad and I had always gotten along. He was warm, calm, with a dry sense of humor that could make me laugh even on my worst days. We hadn't had time alone like this in years, and part of me was looking forward to it. But there was also a strange undercurrent of anticipation, like I was waiting for something to happen, even though I didn't know what. Lunch was casual. Sandwiches, small talk about my classes, his work, and random chores around the house. But by mid-afternoon, I started noticing something off. Dad was acting different, more playful, more relaxed than usual. Not creepy, at least not at first, but his jokes were looser, his smiles lingered a little too long. It threw me off balance. "You know what we should do?" he said suddenly, leaning back in his chair with a grin. "Watch a movie. Something classic." "Sure," I replied, curious. "Got anything in mind?" He smirked, a sly glint in his eye. "How about something a little spicy?" I raised an eyebrow, half laughing. "Spicy like hot wings or, hello, romantic spicy?" "Just for fun," he teased, waving it off. I chuckled, thinking he was joking, and we settled on an old romantic drama, one of those slow-burn movies filled with longing glances and simmering tension. At first, I was caught up in the story, the kind of film that pulls you in with its emotional weight. But then I noticed it, Dad's eyes flicking toward me during the steamy scenes. Not staring outright, but definitely looking. Not joking anymore. My heart started to race. I told myself I was imagining it, but the awareness wouldn't fade. I felt every inch of the couch between us, every small shift he made. The tension in the room grew heavier with every minute, pressing down on me until I could barely focus on the screen. Then came a sharp knock at the door. We both jumped, startled. Dad glanced at me, and for a moment, neither of us moved. "Stay there," he said, motioning with his hand. "Let's see who it is." I crept to the front window and peeked out. It was just Mrs. Evelyn, our neighbor from across the street, holding a basket of cookies. My shoulders sagged with relief. I opened the door, and she greeted me with her usual cheer. "Hi, sweetie. Baked too many cookies again. Thought I'd bring some over." "Thanks, that's so sweet," I said, forcing a smile. Dad appeared behind me, his voice overly bright. "Evelyn, you always know what we need." She chatted briefly before heading back, and once she was gone, the air in the house shifted again. Dad sat back on the couch, but I could still feel his eyes on me. "Lily," he said, his voice softer now, "do you ever wonder what it'd be like if it was just us?" I turned to him slowly, my stomach twisting. "What do you mean?" He paused, searching my face. "I mean, if your mom wasn't here. Just you and me." My breath caught. "That's kind of a weird question." "I know," he said quickly, rubbing the back of his neck. "I know it sounds wrong, but I don't know. I've been feeling things. Things I shouldn't." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to bolt from the room, but another part, the part that had noticed his glances, that had felt the strange thrill in the air, kept me rooted to the spot. Before either of us could say more, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mom. *K, change of plans. Heading back early. Be home in a few hours. *. I showed it to Dad, and his face changed instantly, like a switch had flipped. "We need to act normal," he said, standing up fast. "Okay." I nodded, numb. The moment was gone, but it had happened, lingering between us like a half-finished sentence. When Mom walked through the door later that afternoon, smiling and cheerful, everything looked normal. "So, what did you two do while I was gone?" she asked. "Just watched a movie," Dad said, his voice too calm. "Yeah, something dramatic," I added, laughing nervously. She smiled and moved on, oblivious to the undercurrent she'd just walked into. But I felt it. And I knew he did too. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I couldn't stop replaying it. His words, his eyes, my own reaction. Something had shifted, and I wasn't sure we could ever go back. The days that followed were a strange haze. On the surface, everything was normal, but beneath it, everything felt different. The summer heat pressed against the windows, mirroring the heavy silence between Dad and me. We didn't talk about what happened, not directly, not at all, but it was there. In the way he avoided lingering in the same room too long. In the glances that came too quickly and darted away just as fast. In the way my pulse quickened whenever we passed in the hallway. It was like navigating a house full of invisible tripwires. Mom, thankfully, didn't notice anything off. She was her usual chatty, affectionate self, planning dinners and asking about my classes. I played along, laughing at the right moments, nodding when I was supposed to, but it felt like a performance. Deep down, something had changed, something no one else could see. One night, a few days after Mom's return, we were all in the living room watching a sitcom. The room was filled with her easy laughter, but I was curled up on one end of the couch, hyper-aware of Dad on the other. During a quiet moment, I felt his eyes on me. When I glanced over, our gazes locked for a split second, long enough for my breath to catch. There was something in his eyes, recognition, longing, guilt. I looked away, pretending to focus on the TV, but my heart was racing. That moment wasn't in my head. It was real. Later, after Mom went to bed, I wandered back into the living room, hoping the cool air would clear my mind. To my surprise, Dad was still there, sitting on the couch with a half-empty glass of whiskey, staring into space. "Oh," I said, pausing in the doorway. "Didn't think anyone was still up." He looked up, startled. "Hey." "Yeah, couldn't sleep." I hesitated, then sat in the chair across from him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "Lily, about the other day." My throat tightened. "Yeah," I said softly. "I've been thinking about it too." He stared at his glass. "It was a mistake. I shouldn't have said anything." "Was it?" I asked before I could stop myself. I mean, it felt different. He looked at me, really looked. "It did," he admitted. The air shifted, like a storm brewing beneath calm skies. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words tangled in my throat. Then my phone buzzed on the coffee table. I grabbed it, grateful and frustrated at once. It was a friend. "Want to hang out for a bit?" I stared at the screen. Part of me wanted to stay, to see where this conversation would lead, but the part that still clung to boundaries knew I needed space. "I think I'm gonna head out," I said, standing. "Just for a bit." He nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "Okay, be safe." I left the house with my heart pounding, unsure what I was running from, or toward. When I returned later, Dad was still awake, sitting in the same spot, now reading a book. He looked up as I walked in. "How was it?" "Good," I said, sitting beside him. "Did you miss me?" I added, half joking. He chuckled, but his eyes carried a weight his laugh didn't. "Maybe a little." I smiled, but inside I was spinning. Then came another knock at the door. We both froze, startled. Through the glass, I saw Mrs. Evelyn again, cheerful as ever, holding another basket of cookies. "Hope I'm not disturbing," she chirped. Dad stood, greeting her with forced charm. I watched his eyes flick between her and me, something unspoken lingering. After she left, I turned to him, heart racing. What were we talking about before? He hesitated. I don't know if we should. Why not? I asked, voice quieter. It's already out there. He ran a hand through his hair. Okay, but whatever we say, it stays between us. I promise, I said without hesitation. He looked at me carefully. I feel something, Lily. I don't know what it is, but it's there, and I can't ignore it anymore. I feel it too, I whispered, surprising myself. He reached for my hand. When our fingers touched, something inside me sparked. It was wrong, complicated, terrifying, but real. The days that followed felt like walking a tightrope. We'd crossed an invisible line, spoken words that couldn't be unsaid, shared a touch that lingered on my skin. We never mentioned it directly after that night, but everything had changed. We became experts at pretending, father and daughter at breakfast, passing syrup, talking chores. When Mom was around, we laughed at her stories, complimented her cooking. But behind the smiles, something deeper stirred, something neither of us could name. One evening, as I sat in my room scrolling through my phone, I heard laughter from downstairs. I peeked out and saw my parents at the dining table, talking like nothing was wrong. But it didn't feel normal to me. It felt like a rehearsed scene. Mom called up, "Lily, come join us." I hesitated, then forced a smile and went downstairs. As I sat at the table, Dad glanced at me, just a brief look, but it carried that spark, that unspoken understanding only we shared. We played a board game, something nostalgic. Mom laughed, sipping wine. Dad was animated, more than usual. Each time our hands brushed reaching for a card, I felt a jolt. He looked at me like he remembered everything we'd said, and everything we hadn't. That night, after Mom went to bed, I wandered into the living room. Dad was there again, whiskey in hand. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. I shook my head. "You?" I sat on the couch, legs curled beneath me. The silence wasn't awkward anymore. It was heavy, familiar. "You've been different lately," I said softly. He didn't answer right away. "So have you." We both knew what we meant. "I wish things were simpler," I said, almost to myself. He nodded. "Me too. But I can't stop thinking about that night. What we said. What we felt." I swallowed hard. "Me neither." He set his glass down and leaned forward, eyes locked on mine. "Do you ever wonder what would happen if we didn't stop?" I couldn't answer. My heart was pounding too loudly. The idea was terrifying but intoxicating. Then my phone buzzed. I grabbed it, half grateful for the interruption. It was Aunt Claire. Asterisk be there in 10. Couldn't wait any longer. Asterisk. I showed it to Dad, confused. "Aunt Claire? She's supposed to be with Mom hours away. Why's she coming?" His face paled. "Why now?" There was a knock at the door. Through the glass, we saw Aunt Claire, dragging a suitcase, smiling brightly. "Surprise!" she called. "Couldn't wait to see you guys." Dad muttered under his breath, "This can't be happening." We let her in. She hugged us, launching into a rant about how the weather ruined her plans and how she missed Mom. All I could think was, we're trapped. She moved through the house like she owned it, dropping bags in the guest room, chatting about her job, her cat, her skincare routine. Dad and I tried to keep our faces neutral, avoiding each other's eyes, but the energy between us hadn't vanished. It was just buried under Aunt Claire's loud stories. Later, after she went to bed, Dad found me in the hallway. "We need to be careful," he whispered. "I know," I said. "But we can't pretend it doesn't exist." He looked into my eyes, and I saw the truth we both avoided. We were in deep. This wasn't something we could erase. "What do we do?" I asked. He took a breath. "We take it slow. We keep it quiet. And we figure it out together." Then we heard Aunt Claire's voice from the guest room. "You two still up?" We jumped apart. "Just chatting," Dad called back. "We'll get some rest. Big family breakfast tomorrow." We murmured goodnight, retreating to our rooms, but sleep didn't come. Something dangerous, something real, was growing between us, and it was getting harder to hide. The next few days were a balancing act. Aunt Claire stayed longer than planned, turning our quiet weekend into a whirlwind of noisy meals and card games. To her, everything was perfect. To Mom, everything was normal. But for Dad and me, nothing was the same. Every shared glance across the dinner table, every accidental brush in the kitchen, carried the weight of our secret. One afternoon, while Mom and Claire were out shopping, I found Dad at the kitchen table, reading the newspaper. I stood in the doorway, unsure, then stepped closer. "Dad," I said softly, "we need to talk." He set the paper aside. "About, you know." "Yeah," I replied, my voice trembling. He gestured for me to sit. "I can't stop thinking about it," I admitted, eyes on the floor. "And I don't know what that says about me." He leaned forward. "It says you're human. And you're not alone. I think about it too." "What if she suspects something?" I asked. "She might," he said quietly. "But she doesn't know for sure." We sat in silence, the weight of our feelings pressing down. "What if we just explored it?" I said finally, "just to see what it means." His eyes widened. "Lily." "Just a kiss," I said, breathless. "Just one. Then we'll know if it's real or just some summer daydream." He hesitated, then nodded. As we leaned in, footsteps echoed in the hallway. "Hey, you two okay in here?" Aunt Claire's cheerful voice cut through. We jumped apart. "Yeah," I said, voice too high. "Just talking." She poked her head in, grinning. "We're doing movie night again. You better not bail." "Wouldn't dream of it," Dad said quickly. She walked off, but the moment was gone. Later, after the movie, after everyone went to bed, I sat in my room, heart racing. I couldn't sleep. I didn't know if I wanted to. A soft knock came at my door. I opened it to find Dad, looking conflicted but determined. "Can we talk?" he asked. I nodded and let him in. We sat on the edge of my bed, the room dimly lit, the silence louder than ever. "I know this is wrong," he said, voice low, "but I can't keep pretending it's not there." "Neither can I replied. "But we can't keep hiding." Claire almost walked in. "Mom could be next." He took my hand. "Maybe we stop hiding." I froze. "You mean, tell her?" "She deserves to know," he said. "If we're going to do this, whatever this is, it can't be a secret forever." My throat tightened. "It could ruin everything." "I know," he said. "But we've already crossed the line. Now we have to decide who we're going to be on the other side." I nodded, heart racing. The next morning, after breakfast, we asked Claire to give us a moment alone with Mom. She looked surprised but didn't question it. Mom sat on the couch, curious. "Is everything okay?" Dad took my hand gently but firmly. "There's something we need to tell you." Mom's smile faltered. "What is it?" I could barely speak, my voice cracking. "We have feelings for each other. Not the way we're supposed to." The silence was deafening. Mom stared at us, eyes wide with disbelief. Slowly, she stood. "I never thought I'd hear this. From you. From either of you." "I'm sorry," Dad said, standing. "We never meant to hurt you. But it happened." Tears welled in her eyes. "I need time," she said quietly. "Time to think. To breathe." She walked away, leaving us in the living room, hearts pounding, our lives forever changed. The secret was out. Now, all we could do was wait and face what came next.